All right, so this is going to be a review for your test. There's a couple of key skills. The first key skill you need is GCF, which is finding the GCF and factoring it out. If you had two terms, like something like this, 6x squared, 6x, let's say squared, plus, let's do 15x to the fourth here. Okay? Yeah. So in this case, you want to take out the GCF, which is take out what's in common. So what you have to do is first look at the numbers. Now, when I say what's in common between the numbers, I mean, what do they both have that multiplies to those numbers? So in this case, both of these numbers could take a 3. That's the biggest number that both numbers could take. And then over here, with the variables, you want to see how many is in common by counting. So in this case, this has 2 x's and this has 4 x's. So you could write it kind of like this, xx, xx, xx. So in this case, they have 2 in common. So in this situation, it's x to the second. Is this mine? Oh, okay. So let's continue to the actual thing. After you figure out what's in common, you divide it out. So you're going to do 3x squared, and that's going to be 2 plus 3x squared over here. That's going to be 5x. Remember, exponents you subtract. So 4 minus 2 is 2, if you really need to. After he comes back, just go, okay? All right. So you can factor out the GCF. What's really important to know is the GCF could technically happen in any question. I'm doing a video right now, guys. Any questions? This one is yours.
Thank you.
All right. So GCF could happen in any question. So you always, the first thing you should check if you could GCF. The second core skill is what I'm going to call just factoring, okay? You could say factoring trinomial if you'd really go to Google it or something, but factoring. So this is that 3-term thing that we're really used to, which is what multiplies a C adds a B. So for example, s squared plus 10x plus 24, a classic here. You're always trying to multiply what's to C and what adds to B. So in this case, I need things that multiply to positive 24. So in this case, it's going to be 6 and 4, because 6 times 4 gives me 24, but 6 plus 4 adds to 10. In this situation, because there's no equal 0, you just stop your answer at x plus 6 and x plus 4. That's your full answer for that type of problem. Now, the same problem, but in this case, it's negative 24. Because it's negative, you're multiplying now, not to positive 24, negative 24. So what you need to do is make sure one's positive, one's negative. So this changes the question a bit, where the right answer is 12 and negative 2, because that still adds to 10. So the question quite changed just because of a negative. So in this case, it's going to be x plus 12, x minus 2. If the middle is negative, so x squared minus 10x plus 24, and let's say the second number is positive, then when you multiply to positive 24, usually you would do 6 and 4, which is positive 10. But that's not the right thing. I need negative 10. So that forces me to do negative 6 and negative 4, which results in negative 10. Okay? So in this case, it's x minus 6, x minus 4. What's important to know is that any type of these questions, I can always set equal to 0. So if I set it equal to 0, it adds an extra step to it. So let's do the last version. X squared minus 10x minus 24. So I need things that multiply to negative 24 equals 0. So I need things that multiply to negative 24 that add to negative 10. In this case, negative 12, and positive 2. So x minus 12 and x plus 2. But the problem is it equals 0. Remember, if you have an equal sign or equals 0, it has to equal 0, that's first off. And if it doesn't, you make it equal 0. After you get to the end, you're going to split and solve each one individually. Remember, the shortcut is you're just going to flip the sign. So in this case, this is x equals positive 12, and x plus 2 equals 0. This is going to be x equals negative 2. Okay? So that's factoring, let's say basic, I guess, or factoring normal. All right? Now, let's do factoring with a greater than 1. If you want to look up, Google more problems, that's what you do, where a is greater than 1. So there's two scenarios that happens with that. So the first one is going to be where we could GCF. So for example, 3x squared plus 9x plus 6. Always look if you could GCF. And in this situation, I could take out a 3. X squared plus 3x plus 2. Because I could take out the GCF, then I just make my factors. X plus 3. Or, I'm sorry. Things that multiply to 2 that adds to 3. So that's going to be x plus 2, x plus 1. Just remember, it could always also equal 0. If it did equal 0, you technically split it into 3 pieces, but this part here, where 3 equals 0, that does not matter. That's an impossible statement. So you still only kind of look at the parentheses. So in this case, your answer should be negative 2 and negative 1 in this case. The second thing that can happen when a is greater than 1 is slide and divide. So 3x squared, let's do plus 8 plus 10, x in the middle. First, you always check if you could GCF. In this case, they don't all 3 have it. So like 10 and 8 has 2 in common, but it doesn't matter. All 3 have to have something in common. So what we're going to do is when you do slide and divide, you're going to take the 3 and bring it over to the 8. So it's going to be x squared plus 10x plus 24. You still factor like normal once it looks like this. So things that multiply to 24, that add to 10, 6 and 4. So x plus 6, x plus 4. The trick in this one, we slide over to borrow the 3. We're going to divide after Yoni comes back in. So we're going to divide both of them by the number I borrowed. Always divide by the number I borrowed. So in this case, I'm going to divide by 3 and 3. So this one reduces down to x plus 2. Because it reduced down to a whole number, we don't have to do anything special. In this situation, where it's 8 over 3, it changes the question a bit because it's a fraction. Our final answer should not be a fraction in these scenarios. So what we're going to do is move the 3 back to the front. I always describe it as you borrowed money from the bank. If you're not able to simple down your loan, they take it back. So they're going to take it and put it back in front. So 3x plus 4. So in this scenario, this would be your final answer. There could be situations like this one, 8x squared plus 10x plus 3, where you slide and divide. So I'm going to slide to 8. It's going to be x squared plus 10x plus 24. Things that multiply to 24 that add to 10, again, is 6 and 4. I'm purposely using the same numbers over and over. That's not going to be like on the test. Make sure you actually know how to do this. So x plus 6, x plus 4. So in this scenario, I'm going to divide by both of them by 8. What's strange about this is that 6 over 8 reduces down to 3 over 4. And 4 over 8 reduces down to 1 over 2. The issue is, even though I simplified as much as possible, neither of them happen to go back to being a whole number. So both of them has to send back in front. They're the new denominators. So your final answer should be 4x plus 3 and 2x plus 1. Remember, always simplify. If it doesn't simplify to a whole number, move that denominator back to the front. Reminder, this question could also have an equal 0. This question could also have an equal 0. All right, guys, be quiet when you're in here, please. Next one. So, factor. I'll call these special cases, but you still could do them normally. I'll just type it to be neat. Guys, be quiet. It was quiet before you came in. So, factor special cases. So in this scenario, let's say if you had something like this. X squared minus 100. So in this scenario, I have a C value. Just as a reminder, it's always ax squared plus bx plus c, where c is the number by itself and b is the number always in front of x. So in this scenario, c is the negative 100. So c is negative 100, and b doesn't exist here. So b is 0. So I'm thinking of things that multiply to negative 100 that adds a 0. So since it's negative, I know one's positive, one's negative. And since it's 0, I know both numbers have to be the same. So it's going to be 10 and negative 10. So I can write this answer as x minus 10, x plus 10. So in this special case scenario with the two terms, you could kind of just square root both of them. On a calculator, actually, let me show you how to do it on a calculator. But on a calculator, you could square root also. But because it's a two-term, that's a big hint. You could square root it. So let's say if you had something like this, which was 9x squared minus 4. In this scenario, you first look always if you could GCF. In this scenario, there's nothing to GCF. So because of that, then since I know it's a two-term, what I can do is have my first number and my second number be square. So let's say if you're panicking on a test, you forget what the square root of 9 is. The square root button is you click second, this blue button on the top left. And then from 7, one up, one left, is x squared. So second reverses that to square root. So let's say if you just forgot what the square root of 9 is, that is 3. So in this case, you could get the answer as 3x minus 2 and 3x plus 2. It's always going to be minus and plus the square roots, okay? If it's a two-termer, if it's two terms. Remember, you could always take a GCF out first. So for example, you could have a situation like this, where it's 2x squared minus 50. I look at both of these. Oh, I can factor out a 2 first. X squared minus 25. Oh, this is a perfect squared, so this works. So it's 2, x plus 5, x minus 5. Okay. So remember, you could always GCF out first. All right. The other type of special case, I should say, so another special case, is x squared plus 10x plus 25. Or you could still do it normally. What multiplies to 25 that adds a 10. You realize it's 5 and 5. So it's x plus 5, x plus 5. Because you're literally writing the same thing twice, you want to shorten it to x plus 5 squared. Okay? It's just another type of special case. If you get the same exact answer, you could rewrite it as x plus 5 squared. Or x plus whatever squared. The next thing could be the 4 term, which is factored by grouping. So 2x squared plus 10x. Oh, I'm sorry. 2x cubed plus 10x squared plus 3x plus 15. Here's an example of factor by grouping. Guys, cut it out. It was quiet before you got here. Get out of the chair if he asks you because he was there first. Make it quick, make it easy. I don't want to waste time. Thank you, Aaron. So in this one, you have 4 terms. 4 terms is too many terms. You know how to do with 3, and 2 is just a special case. So because you have 4 terms, we're going to split or split and solve them separately. So I'm going to split them and do GCF for both of them, okay? So in this case, I first look at this, see what's in common. In this case, it's a 2x squared. I could take what's left over, which is x plus 5. Over here, I look at what's in common. In this case, it is a 3. So in this case, I could take out what's in common, which is x plus 5. In this scenario, you know you did it correctly when the inside of the parentheses match. If the inside of the parentheses don't match, you did it incorrectly, or you're doing it wrong some way, somehow. So in that case, because the insides match, we have 2 separate outsides. Your final answer looks like this. 2x squared plus 3, the outsiders, and x plus 5, the insiders. So because of that, your answer is always going to be the set of the outsider times the set of the insider. Even though you see the insider twice, you don't write it twice. You only write it once. So if you could do something like GCF, always pay attention. So 4x squared plus 20x, 4x cubed plus 20x squared plus 6x plus 30. Always look, even if it's a 4-termer, if you could take out the GCF. So in this case, all these could take a 2. So you take a 2 out first, 2x cubed plus 10x squared plus take out a 2, 3x plus 15. Then you would just do the same thing you did as above. Just know that your final answer would have a 2 in front of the answer. So don't forget that 2 in the final answer, or it's technically wrong, and you'll lose a half a point to a point, depending how much you messed up. Special cases, 4 terms, GCF, factoring. Go ahead. One last thing about setting equal. If you have to solve an equation, just a reminder. Let's say you have x squared plus 7x plus 6 equals -4. If you have an equal sign involved, and the instructions will say solve compared to simplify, if you have an equal sign involved, you have to make sure it equals 0 first. So you're going to have to plus 4 on both sides. Since I'm plussing a normal 4, that goes with the normal 6 over here. So it's going to be x squared plus 7x. What are you doing? Don't do that. Okay, don't do that, though. Equals 10 equals 0. So it's going to be x plus 5, x plus 2 equals 0. Then you split and solve. -5 will be one of your answers. -2 will be another answer, okay? Remember, has to equal 0 before you start. So if you had something like this, x squared plus 6x plus 10 equals negative 5x. Remember, you're adding 5x on both sides, so it's going to go with the other x. So it should be combining like terms. So you rewrite that as x squared plus 11x plus 10 equals 0. So x plus 10, x plus 1 equals 0, negative 10, negative 1. I think that's everything on your test. If I forgot something, I'll post it later or I'll tell you in class, okay? Oh, whoa, one last thing. Let me show you how to get the factors of any numbers on a calculator. So let's say you had a crazy one like this. X squared plus 196 over here plus 53x. So in this case, in a question like this, you would need the factors of 196. You would need the factors of 196, but that's a lot of factors. So how can you find that quickly? In your calculator, you could go to y equals, which is the most top left question button. Make sure you have this cleared. So when you click y equals, since I'm looking for things that 196 or things that multiply to 196, I'm going to use 196 divided by x. X is the button next to alpha. It says xt theta n. Now, I could graph that, which gives me this curve. That's not really useful. So what I'm going to do is click second graph, and it gives me a table. This table will give me a list of all the things that multiply to 196. So if you see the first set, it's 1 and 196. Makes sense? 2 times 98. 3 times a decimal. If it's a decimal, it's not going to be your answer, so you don't have to worry about that. Okay. 4 and 49. In this scenario, since I'm trying to add to 53, I can see from my calculator 4 and 49 is 53. So my answer is going to be x plus 4, x plus 49. So if you're ever in trouble and you're forgetting the factors, especially on this test that has 25 questions, you can use the calculator. Now I think I taught you everything I want you to know. Good luck on the test.